Apologies.
Right.
So we've had the first.
Yeah.
We've had the first one. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Off you go.
Right. So we're now on to informing families about the child, and I would have to say that, as we've already said this morning and continue to emphasize, prospective long-term carers need a comprehensive understanding of the child, what they have experienced and how it has affected them. Research has shown that over a quarter of looked after babies experience 3 or more moves before their first birthday, and that exacerbates the negative consequences of domestic abuse that they may have experienced. Older children could have lived through a variety of circumstances prior to joining their prospective permanent family. Some may have experienced domestic abuse for years. Others may have formed strong bonds with their present carers, while some will have undergone numerous moves, embedding feelings of rejection and worthlessness. So this is all very important, that these areas are properly explored and covered in thinking about what the child needs. The preparation of families will be supported through the use of, for example, assessment reports, preparation courses, life story work, child or life appreciation days, and the involvement of wider family. Current foster families and schools can provide permanent carers with valuable insights. However, this level of support is not always available. And a survey by Adoption UK in 2021 found almost a quarter of adopters said they did not feel as though they were given all the information they needed about their child or children before they moved in. And I think that's something we have to think about very carefully. We now turn to preparing and supporting the children to move into a permanent home. The children themselves should clearly understand the aims of the prospective placement and the future plans for them. And we were surprised to find that some of the children were very young, who really understood and needed to have explanations to them. Efforts should be made to find out their wishes and feelings, and for all children coming to live with a new family, nothing is familiar. They will not understand what is expected of them. It will be important to explain routines and family norms, and children need to know what to expect. Many arrive having little or no guidance as to how to behave, and with no understanding of what is acceptable and what is not. So preparation should include introduction to all members of their new family, and certainly including the pets. Children should be encouraged to bring cherished possessions with them. Most children will experience loss and disorientation when moving to a new family. They may be losing friends, familiar schools, and neighborhoods. In joining a new family, children will experience being a stranger in a strange land. Having to leave everything familiar and not knowing what will happen generates great anxiety and uncertainty, which may make it difficult for children to accept their new family. When children have experienced many moves, they will see their current home as only temporary and anticipate further rejection and loss. As a result, they may be very wary of investing in new attachments and taking a long time to settle. And Hedy will now focus on the support children and carers need once children are in their.
As with our previous presentation, we start by looking at the support for carers that they may need when looking after very young children who've experienced domestic abuse. Infants coming to live with new families must resolve the grief and trauma of losing a key attachment figure, leaving many feeling abandoned. And it's important that relationships with past carers are maintained because they provide infants with a sense of security. And contact with birth family needs to be carefully planned and managed, and carers supported to ensure that it doesn't affect the child negatively. And when children have experienced domestic abuse, contact between carers, children and birth parents can be particularly challenging when the families are known to each other. For example, when it's kinship carers and it's a grandparent. Adopters, though, have no legal requirement to maintain contact with birth families once the order's finalised, although the majority, surprisingly, agree to ongoing contact. Young children often believe that they are responsible for the move to live with the new family, that they are to blame for this move. The primary challenge for carers is to establish secure bonding and attachment with the infant. Understanding and interpreting children's behaviour is key to promoting such attachment and meeting the child's needs. Babies who've experienced domestic abuse may be constantly fretful, yet hard to soothe, like Wendy described earlier. They require much time and emotional energy to show them that their needs will be met. And the foster care of a 4-year-old provides a lovely example of how she gained his trust. To quote, "He found it impossible to trust me and watched my face warily all the time. I found that after nursery, if I sat with a drink for him on the settee with children's television on, he would circle the house for a long time, dragging his favourite blanket. And eventually he'd end up sitting on my lap, wrapped in the blanket, drinking his drink. I needed just to be there, and he needed to have the confidence that I would wait for him to come to me." So let us now turn to supporting carers of middle-year children. Children may not understand why they've had to leave their birth or foster family. And it's important whenever possible to maintain relationships, for them to maintain relationships with significant people. For many children exposed to domestic violence, their foster carer may have provided their first experience of consistent and safe parenting. Contact with previous carers can be an important factor in refuting children's feelings of self-blame and supporting a sense of continuity. As one adopted mother explained, "It was massively important to him in settling with us. I can't say strongly enough how inclusion of the foster carers in our life is essential." And the pre-existing relationship between the child and the birth family will be influenced, however, whether contact helps the child resolve issues of attachment, separation and loss or not. Many children will grow up aggressive and antisocial behaviour, and the impact on carers can be debilitating unless support and help are available. And a kinship carer of her 8-year-old granddaughter explains, "The minute it's not her way, that will start violence, which will be kicking, smacking in the face, pushing downstairs, a good shoving, pushing in the back, throwing things, and quite recently she's taken to hitting and biting." Carers need to be supported to establish firm boundaries that are understood by the child to be fair. They need to model healthy relationships with their partner and understand the reasons behind the child's behaviour. Some children may have difficulty accepting comfort. They may be fearful of any emotional involvement due to their history of being constantly let down and betrayed, and have difficulty accepting comfort from their carers. As one carer explained, "He can't bear to show any emotion, so he cries when he thinks you can't see him. If you see him showing emotion, he just clams up." Others may have survived the abuse by disassociating. They may be so cut off from their feelings that they don't really know what the truth is. To be important that carers are sensitive and understanding rather than critical. And in order to develop a positive and caring relationship with their child, carers will need to, firstly, reassure the child that any misbehaviour will not terminate their love. Provide a routine to give a sense of control and allow the development of trust. Allow the child some private space. Keep lines of communication open. And finally, involve the child wherever possible in family decisions. Exposure to domestic abuse may not only have affected a child's learning, but also their ability to cope with frustration and to control their emotions in interactions with peers and adults. Many, but not all children who've experienced domestic abuse will be behind in their learning and education. However, it was rather sad to find that only 49% of adopted and permanently placed children achieve their appropriate level in reading, writing and maths at Key Stage 2. For those like me who are ignorant of what Key Stage 2 is, that's 7 to 8 years, compared with 3/4 of children living with their birth parents. As we previously discussed, children's learning may have been affected by previous poor attendance and short-term exclusions. They will need encouragement and some will require specialist help to catch up with their peers. Starting a new school can be particularly stressful, particularly when children have very low self-esteem, poor social skills, and are already delayed in their learning. Carers should work with teachers to understand what triggers such unacceptable behaviour. And children who've learned to avoid interactions may be overlooked in the classroom. They're the quiet ones who sit in the background, who sit on the back row. Many children will have a negative self-image. Carers will need to be supported to understand that children's past experiences may have resulted in them seeing themselves as failures generally, no good at school, disliked by their peers, rejected by their birth parents, and unlovable. A child's sense of who they are depends on a number of different issues, including academic and sporting achievements and peer friendships. Children need to be encouraged in what they attempt, and even minor achievements should be applauded. Children who are different from the majority of the population may need additional support to develop a positive sense of identity. Children should be helped to grow up understanding and proud of their heritage. We'll now turn to look at the issues facing carers who are looking after teenage children. Many adolescents will have settled well with their permanent alternative families, and behavioural difficulties only emerge when they reach puberty. Everything's been fine before then. The physical and emotional changes can trigger flashbacks to feelings of fear and uncertainty engendered by that domestic abuse that they experienced. As a result, teenagers may behave in disturbing and disturbed ways. Some will respond with anger and aggression, while others will internalise their emotions. And the following carer provides a lovely example. He ran away when he was 12. We had the police out, the helicopters, and when they brought him back, they said, "We're going to be seeing more of this boy. His attitude is unbelievable." He just turned from this lovely little kid into this very angry person. It was just like a switch. Although some children use school, academic and sporting achievements to escape from early traumas, for many school poses problems. The use of violence and aggression to get what they want, learned from their previous exposure to domestic abuse, is not easily accommodated in secondary school. Carers will need to work alongside teachers to develop a shared strategy and a planned way forward for this child. For others, as we've said before, school provides continuity in terms of teachers and friends, a place to escape from the abuse. Teenagers need to believe that they are not losers, and carers should try and identify an activity in which they are interested and encourage them to pursue it, however diverse that is. One sense of identity is based on understanding our past. For children whose experience in care has been complex, disruptive and traumatic, they may not understand their birth family history of domestic abuse and why they are in care. They may have no coherent narrative of what happened to them and be presented with conflicting stories about their early lives. Developing a positive sense of identity is difficult when cared for a family that differs substantially from the birth family. These teenagers may have the added hurdle to overcome in developing a positive sense of who they are. Without support and understanding, some may come to see their abusive parents, and by extension themselves, as less worthy than the majority of the society to which their carers belong. Life story work is an important tool to explore children's past, present and future, and to celebrate their achievements. Now, experimental impulsive behaviours are part of ordinary, normal adolescent development. However, teenagers who've experienced domestic abuse and have low self-esteem and self-worth are at greater risk of being drawn into dangerous, experimental and impulsive behaviours. Traumatised and unhappy teenagers may try to cope with their distress in dangerous ways, such as going missing. Reasons for running away may be driven by numerous factors, including a wish to reconnect with the birth family, to punish the adoptive parents or carers, or having been seduced or coerced by gangs for illegal purposes. When teenagers run away from home, they are in great danger of being physically or sexually abused and exploited. There are a variety of reasons why teenagers take up alcohol and drugs. Among them, the alleviation of stress and the obliteration of their circumstances. It may take carers considerable time to develop the type of trust that allows adolescents to talk about drugs and alcohol. Being able to discuss such issues will enable teenagers to make more informed choices. The emotional vulnerability of adopted and looked after children can leave them open to exploitation, as the following adoptive mother explains. She was mixing with the wrong children. She was involved with drugs, alcohol, and basically she'd be friends with anybody who was nice to her. So there was always a concern that she was going off with the wrong people. And teenagers with low self-esteem and little self-worth are in danger of sexual exploitation. They may be groomed by a stranger or someone they know, whose strategy is often to develop a romantic relationship, making the teenager feel special by giving them gifts and the emotion many of them crave. An adoptive mother provides an example. She gets on the internet and she's contacting older people, adults in their 20s, for sex. First happened a couple of years ago. She'd have been 14. First it was Facebook, and it was inappropriate people from all over the country. These children are also more vulnerable to being recruited into gangs through a mixture of grooming and intimidation. As Calgary says in his report on county lines, they may be lured in with gifts of money or drugs, or by the promise of attention, belonging and status. After this, they're coerced through threatened or actual violence against the children themselves or against their family members, sexual abuse and shaming, and or debt bondage, where they are forced to repay the cost of the gifts from their exploiters. And if carers are concerned, they need to ask questions but avoid being judgmental. Raising the issue must be handled carefully, as the teenager is unlikely to know that they are being exploited. The child's likely to be extremely scared. They will need to feel supported and believe that their carer is on their side. And when carers believe that their child's being groomed into gang activity, they should be encouraged to seek the help of professionals, such as their supervising social worker, teachers, and the police, as well as other people that they trust. So that's me done. And Wendy will now briefly discuss what support is available for children and families.
Thank you. I'm only going to touch on this very briefly, and there is much more in the publication. that we have prepared. So let me just run through what kind of support is available. Families caring for traumatized children are likely to need support. And foster carers and looked after children are eligible for local authority support. Adopters and special guardians can access some support through the Adoption Support Fund. And in some authorities, there are now dedicated kinship care teams. However, a UK-wide survey by Adoption UK in 2020 found that child and adolescent mental health service were the most frequently required services that adopters never received. Carers and parents cannot make a direct referral, leaving them dependent on professionals to do this. The high turnover of social workers, as we were commenting on earlier, has a damaging impact on referrals. Once referred, children and families may experience long waits for any service, and others may be refused. So that it's not a positive picture as we would have hoped. The personal education plan for looked after children is another important source of support. And finally, when young people are matched with an independent visitor or mentor, their experience is very positive, as the following reports illustrate. One child said, "My independent visitor changes my life a lot. She's making me calmer because I feel lots of anger in me." And another said, "I am able to talk to my independent visitor about different problems. We also have a laugh together." However, only 3.5% of the total of looked after children in the looked after children population in England has an independent visitor. But our good practice guide includes a detailed list of resources for professionals, carers, and children. And now we are going to turn to the last two slides, which provide a limited list of useful references, which will be included with the slides that are going to be sent to you. And in conclusion, I think we can turn to the last slide.
The last slide.
Good. Right. So in conclusion, the important messages that we took away from our study is that each child is an individual, and the experience of domestic abuse will have affected their health and development in different ways. Some will cope well, while others will struggle at various points in their lives. Carers will need to know what these children have lived through in order to understand how to react to challenging circumstances in a supportive and non-judgmental way, and when necessary, to seek specialist help. But most importantly, children of all ages need unconditional love. Thank you very much for listening to us.